Have you ever wondered who builds the towers that we depend on every single day and what kind of person decides, yeah, I'll climb that? Have you ever wondered who keeps your TV and radio working and why someone would choose a job most people wouldn't even go near? Welcome to FuggaBRAT. I'm Shelby Fox, and today I'm here with Gary Shatto. He builds and maintains broadcasting towers all over the United States and around the world, making sure TV and radio actually reach us. Hi, Gary. It's so great to have you here.
Hi, Shelby. Thanks for having me.
Why don't you explain to me what your job is on these towers?
So I build and maintain communication towers for the broadcast industry, including TV, television, and radio. So basically, we make sure that people can get free TV and radio by not really free, I guess, because you got to have a TV and you got to have rabbit ears, and or a radio. Most vehicles have radios, so a lot of people listen to the radio in their car. We're doing a big radio thing right now here in Dallas.
Yeah. But wait a minute. So the one that you're doing, that's different than broadcasting like TV. Is that a different tower?
Yeah, they different towers, they run on different frequencies, right? So they're all this stuff goes out through the airwaves, so we got to separate it somehow, and they do that by frequency. And frequency just means the frequency of the standing wave, right? So like FM is working in a certain spectrum, and then television works in a different spectrum, and then we broadcast that and send it out. Cell phone towers are different. They work on a different technology. You all have been through the whole G thing. You went from 1G to 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G. And that's just talking about the generation of equipment, broadcast equipment that they use. And then so it works off of because it's a two-way thing, right? So like with TV and radio, it's a one-way. We're sending stuff to you. You're not sending stuff to us. So with with cell phones, it's different because it's two-way traffic, right? So you're calling me, I'm calling you. And so it has to go both ways. So it works on a completely different technology. The new 5G stuff doesn't have real tall towers because it's slow. And so what they do is they go really short distances. So you goes out of your cell phone to a cell phone tower that is um, within most of the time within a few blocks from where you're at. And then it goes from that tower to another tower to another tower to another tower. And then it goes to a big central building called a knock where all calls from that area are routed and sent out, to where they need to go all over the world. And so cell phones work on a completely different network. And actually, 5G is the old spectrum that television used to work on. And then so the cell phone companies ran out of bandwidth. They had sold too much content to too many people, and their systems were slowing down. And so they went to the government and they said, hey, look, we need more bandwidth. And the government said, well, we don't have any more bandwidth in that spectrum where you're at. We gotta change some stuff around. So they took a block of wavelength from TV and sold it to the cell phone companies, and then they made TV go to a whole new system. It's crazy. So you remember that we went through this whole thing where everybody you had to get new TVs. First, it was the DTV revolution, evolution thing, where everybody had to get a new TV and you had to have a set-top box. And then a few years later, they came out with this new system, like from 2018, we started doing repack again. And so everybody had to get you had to re-download all your new stuff in order to get the same shows that you were getting. Well, that's because the government changed the frequencies. They gave what you used to work on to the cell phones, and then we built a whole new network for television. And your
That is
your tax
crazy.
your tax dollars paid for all that, by the way.
Yeah. You know,
Mm.
it's so interesting the way that you describe it. Of course, I'm not physically there doing the job and knowing every in and out about it like you, but the way that you describe it is so easy to understand.
Well, that's because I'm just a simple Iowa farm boy out here. Uh,
Yeah. So, what was the actual thing that made you even think about doing this type of work?
I needed money to take my girlfriend to Disneyland.
So, what you answer a job
A
ad in the
newspaper
paper?
ad. There was so like right. So in South Dakota, I was taking I can't even remember her name and her daughter was taking them to Disney World in California. My
No, it's
mom
land. Land is in
land
California. Yeah.
land. We were going to Disney and my mom was gonna take us. We had tickets to go, but I didn't have any spending money. And I owned a welding business and it was floundering at best, you know?
Right.
And so I was like, God, I need some way to make some quick money. And I picked up it was a Sunday paper and it was a Wednesday afternoon and I'm at my kitchen table and I was going through the ads. You know, the paper was already 3 days old, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It was Wednesday.
Yeah.
And, there was an ad that said climbers wanted, and it was just a few blocks from my house. And I went down there, applied, and they hired me on the spot. And then they paid me per diem. I didn't know about per diem. I didn't know that. I'm like, wait, you're gonna pay me to work and you're gonna pay me to live? All right, I'm in. You know, it
What
was
year was that? I mean, you're talking about the ads in the paper and everything, so that had to
yeah,
be
with
like
1990
90 something.
ish, 5-ish, somewhere around there, 95.
Wow, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's just
And then
crazy.
my life has been a fucking disaster ever since.
But you met me, so hey, there you go.
There's always a bright spot.
So, what happens when there's rain or snow or sleet to the tower?
So, okay, all right. So last year, the year before when this happened, and uh, I I don't know, maybe it's been a couple years ago. But anyway, the sun comes out. So, the steel is cold, right? And
Right.
so it starts forming ice, gathering ice, kind of like the side of your car or whatever. It's metal and it gets colder quicker, faster. And then when, so it rained all night here and the temperature slowly started dropping. About 3 o'clock in the morning, it got down to 32, which is freezing point. Probably freezes quicker on the tower than that, right? Because you got wind and wind chill and all that.
On
And
steel
so
as well.
on the steel on the tower up high at 1,500 feet, there's all them pieces of steel up there, and they're all gathering water, right? And they drink water, and the water's running down them, and then all of a sudden it starts to get cold, and the shit starts freezing. Okay, so then it starts building ice, building ice, building ice. The rain builds ice all night long. It rained. It's been building ice. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's probably maybe an inch or two thick by now up there. And then you add on this sleety snow stuff on top of that, and then it freezes on top of the ice, just like on the roadways. You know. And so then what's going to happen is it's cold right now, so it's not going to be melting, right? We're pretty safe right now, right? Because
Okay, so why do you
those,
say that?
well, because so the ice up there, it gets big. It gets really big. It gets as big as a car when it, and it, thick. And it gets thick. And then when the sun comes out, it melts the ice off one side of the leg and one side of the iron, right? So like when the sun hits it, it kind of melts that part of it. But then the other side is still there.
So let me just say, you're basically telling me that when the sun comes up, if the sun is coming up and say it comes up in the east side of the tower is
Does
going to have the
yes.
snow that's more melted than the west side.
You're right. And
Okay, got
then
it.
and then as it warms up, that shit comes off like shrapnel, like it comes starts coming down and you can't know where it's gonna go. It goes everywhere. And they're big chunks and they'll smash your car, it'll smash your buildings, it smashes everything. So
So when you're saying that the ice comes off, it's kind of like icicles.
yeah, it's crazy. It
Yeah.
so like we knew that we had ice on the tower, right? You can sit on the road and you can see the shit from miles away. So anyway, I think I had my RV parked across the street at that time for whatever reason, and I don't know why I wasn't staying on the site. That's what I normally do in Raleigh. But anyway, I pulled up to the gate. I could see these big chunks of ice coming off, and I'm like, holy. And but I made a run for it. I ran for it and I parked underneath the awning down there by the tower. And this shit comes off there, Shelby. It's so scary, to hear it coming through the air. Wham! Wham! And I had a welder hanging on the back of the skip pan. You know what the skip pan is, right? The thing we go up and down.
Yes.
I'd rented a welder to use up on the tower and it was hanging on the back of the pan. And that thing looked like it had been dropped out of the back of a truck running 60 miles an hour down the interstate. It was just beat up on there wasn't a piece of straight metal left on it. It's just very violent when this ice comes off these things. It leaves big dents in the ground,
That's crazy.
huge dents, dents the size of cars, like, 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 like a war zone, like somebody had been lobbing mortars, and like a war zone, it'll be big divots, big dents in the ground from ice.
So what is the typical protocol? You guys watch the weather and you just see when it's going to be icy and
Well,
you just move?
the smart guys prepare. They batten down the hatches. They got all their vehicles parked inside. We pack up everything and put it inside of a steel container, and then evacuate and wait for it to stop.
So how do you know that the ice is off? Do you just view it like, because you're talking about ice that's up 800 feet, 1,000 feet, or even higher than
1,500
that.
feet. Yeah.
How do you know? I mean, you can't just look at it unless maybe
You can,
binoculars.
binoculars, and then so it'll let you know when it's done. It just it's because when it's coming off of there, you can you. So like I told you, we were in South Dakota one year, and there was a pickup that got left on site, and a big chunk of ice went through the windshield and smashed the front of the pickup down like if you'd have dropped a boulder on it. The whole hood was caved in, the motor was pushed down eh, from a chunk of ice. Yeah, we're talking big shit here. You don't want to be here when this storm comes.
Right. Is it kind of
Oh,
like an avalanche? And then when it's over, it's like the dust settles.
yeah,
Mhm.
you can look up there and you know it, it it's very obvious when it's coming. When it's when it's hitting the ground, and then once it warms up enough, it just all turns to water.
I mean, it's just wild, but I
Yeah.
suppose you just have to have some good warning.
Wait it out. Yeah.
I don't think that people understand how much goes into what you do for a living.
Federally protected site that I live on, you know? If you commit a crime here of any kind, it's automatically a felony. That's federal crime. You know, back in the day, it was way more relevant than it is today, I think, you know, because there were people that wanted to shut down the major network broadcasters and shit. And they were, you know, so it's a secure place, right? You can't, it's got a 8 foot tall fence all the way around the whole property, and you can't come in or out of here but what you're on 40 cameras. Everything is very secure.
How far away is the news station from the tower?
And they're downtown, usually in major metro areas like this. They're always the studio is always downtown because they you know, TV got big in like after World War II, and the government used that. And, you know, TV and radio was big before that, right? So radio has always been big, and so they're typically in the older parts of town, which are downtown areas. And then the transmitter sites are usually about 20 miles away, you know, out in the middle of nowhere.
When
Uh,
you say
uh,
transmitter site, what does that mean?
so the news isn't made here. That means that the programming is not made where I work. The programming is made in the studio, in the TV studio, in the radio studios, where the TV personalities and the radio personalities, they all go to work every day. They go to a building downtown, it's usually fancy, and then they make the news, they make the programming, they make the radio shows there, and then they send it on a satellite link, a satellite dish from there to where we amplify their programming by a million times and then broadcast it out for the world to consume.
So every
So,
single station does this everywhere.
yeah, yeah, pretty much, yeah. So like during COVID and stuff, they would bring some of the like during COVID, they would bring some of the personalities out to the transmitter sites, and they would set up like temporary green rooms to limit people exposure or whatever. But
Right.
basically these places are like they're they're bomb proof, they're fireproof, they're you know, heavily guarded because if you want to shut down a TV station, right, which would be a big event, you would come knock down their tower, you know? And so, and then back in the day, these places had to be self-sustainable in case of a nuclear war. So they all have these big, gigantic generators and bomb shelters and kitchens and bathrooms and showers and sleeping quarters, and you had to be able to sustain each TV station had to be able to sustain themselves for 30 days. It had to be, you know, if the shit hit the fan, then people would lock themselves in here and keep broadcasting in the event of a national emergency.
That's interesting.
Kind of, right?
Yeah,
And
it
now
is.
and now it's just all old, you know, none of those nuclear wars happened, and so all these transmitter sites got all these lime green and yellow bathrooms and s you know, porcelain steel kitchens and, you know, like they were outfitted in the 1950s because they were.
So, does anybody get to stay in those? Like, why don't you guys stay in there when you
You do,
guys
I
are
do. I do. It always smells like old people's house, but, you know? it doesn't get used that much anymore.
What would be a reason for staying there? Could you stay there through, say, a hurricane? How big is the place?
It's huge. Yeah,
So you could essentially use it for a hurricane shelter. Why would they not do that?
they still do. They do.
For a hurricane shelter?
Well, so like they're still transmitting from here, right? They're still broadcasting. There's 7 buildings here on this property.
Is 7 a lot?
It is a lot because this is Dallas, right? This is Texas. They're in Texas. So we are in Cedar Hill. It's called Cedar Hill, and the reason everything is here is because it's a really tall hill. This hill, compared to the rest of the area around here, is about 500 foot higher than the rest of Dallas Fort Worth.
Fun
Fun
fact.
fact. So then our towers don't have to be as tall. So here, the towers are 1,500 foot tall instead of 2,000 foot tall because they get 500 feet of elevation from the ground. The machines uh, make the TV signal stronger, and then we pipe it out the end of the antenna, 1,500 foot tall. We send it up through them copper pipes, and then it radiates out goes by standing wave up the tower, out the antenna, and then to your television set, to your rabbit ears, and then you watch the people. Yeah.
Rabbit ears are to
Catch the electromagnetic signal that we send out them pipes. They're just catching ions or electrical wave, a standing wave. We bounce a standing wave through them pipes out of that machine. So they make the news. They send it out here on a low power satellite dish. Then we take and amp that up by a million times. So a lot of these TV stations, they push 1,000,000 watts of power per megawatt, right? So they take and we put the TV people's faces through the machine, amplify it, send it up a tube on a standing wave, which a standing wave is just a sine wave, right?
what is a sine wave?
A sine wave is a standing wave of electrical energy, and it has amplitude, which is the height of the hump, right? When you take and you're measuring electrical signals, you do it on an oscilloscope. So, like X-rays and radio waves and all those, they're just different waves of electrical signals. So this standing wave comes out of the end of the antenna. It just changes. If you take a string and you tie it to the doorknob, and then you go back and you walk back 5 feet or however many feet, 20 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 26 miles, and you grab a hold of the rope and you whip it up and down, there'll be a traveling wave that goes down that rope. You'll see a hump. That's a traveling wave. That's a standing wave. And that's how we send it out to the rabbit ears. So the the machine here makes an electrical signal. We standing wave it out the top of the antenna at very high power, and it shoots through the air. And then your little rabbit ears are tuned to catch that wave, and then bring it into your TV, which is basically a decoder, and it decodes those that electrical energy and turns it into a picture and a sound that you can hear and see.
I think it's just completely awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, and then so they learned about all this stuff. So, like radar waves, they developed called chain home, and it was to find when the airplanes were coming to bomb them, right? And so they set up this net, and they broadcast out a signal, and then the signal would go out and bounce off of the airplanes that were coming, and then come back at a different speed because when it hit the airplane and would bounce back, it would change the amplitude of the signal. That's where it all really started, is in the war, and radio was really big, developed by the military. It's all military technology. They just kept building on that.
Why would they have somebody answering phone calls and talk to people?
Different. It used to be different out here, they used to do more stuff out here. But they would have the studio out here. They didn't always have the remote locations. So that's the newer technology too, right? So I think that at one time they probably made the news here. Executives hung out here and engineers hung out here. And it used to be a big bustling area. There's a big parking lot out front here. And all the buildings here all have that. Back in the 50s, I think these places were more inhabited. People were in here smoking and shit, doing what people did back in watching Kennedy go to the moon and shit.
Ah, that's so great. That's all you need. You have the most fantastic, interesting stories of towers and other things too. Gary, it's so great to have you here.
Thanks for having